Hi guys, and welcome back to the Oliato YouTube gaming channel. Today we're continuing our series where we break down individual positions and what to look for players that play in that particular area of the pitch. Today we are looking at DMs, or defensive midfielders. They play generally just in front of the back four, and they can be quite useful in tactics. Not every tactic will have one, but most will have one that will be in the DM position or sitting a little bit further forward, but occupying a more sort of defensive-minded role or mentality, really. So today we're going to load up our beta save where we're Torpedo Moscow. So we're a little bit higher in terms of quality players than we usually use for these videos. I just felt this one um, would give us an insight a bit more into, the critical things you want to look for, and then the other bits and pieces that are nice to have, but they're not essential for your tactic. Now, obviously, what you're doing with your tactic and what the other players are doing will be quite important to learn. What you want from your holding midfielder. Now, we're going to start off today with just the very typical defensive minded. They are looking to protect your back four from attacks through the centre. They're going to be, in effect, the third centre back, assuming you're playing four at the back, in a defensive position, but obviously playing just a bit further forward. So the main thing with defensive midfielders in this area here is they have to be pretty switched on um, and pretty good mentally, I would say. Positioning is something that is quite important. They need to be in the right areas of the pitch. They need to hold that sort of area and not drift too far away from that. So ball winning midfielder on defend will be someone who just sits there, occupies that space, wins the ball back, and then plays simple passes to centre midfielders, your fullbacks, things like that. So one of the other things you want to look at is what's the quality of the passing from your DM. Now, obviously, lower league, you're going to have um, fewer things you can be expecting from your players. So really, you just want someone that's going to be really good defensively. But as you move up the leagues, you can expect them to be able to play with the ball a bit, and play maybe counter-attacking passes and things like that. But obviously, if this is something that's not critical to your tactic, you're looking for this role to fit in with your tactic, then obviously consider how you're looking to attack and play out from the back four, really. So if you're one of the better teams, you probably want someone that's going to be able to take the ball off the centre backs and play the ball into midfield. So if you're playing a short passing game, it's quite important for them. So things like off the ball are quite important, even though on here it's not listed on the ball playing midfielder. It'd be something more like a regista role or a deep line playmaker um, who will be there. Even then, it's not on there. But basically, off the ball means that they can, and anticipation as well comes into this, where they'll be moving into space, so your centre backs can find it with passes and play them simple balls. So if you imagine the opposition are pressing your, centre back on the ball, if your holding midfielder hasn't got good anticipation, good off the ball, and good positioning, positioning's more defensive minded. This is obviously an attacking phase of play. But obviously, if they haven't got good off the ball and anticipation, then they're just going to probably stay stationary, and that attacker that's pressing your centre back is cutting that passing lane, so they have to make another pass. Whereas, obviously, if they're a bit more switched on, they can manoeuvre themselves left or right and be able to receive a pass from your centre backs and things like that. So with this guy here, we got Torpedo Moscow Jarzinho. As you can see, he's a very good defensive-minded holding midfielder. As you can see, his dribbling's not great, his first touch isn't fantastic, and his passing's not great. But he's got really good tackling, he's got good work rate, he's got good aggression, which is quite important as well, I think, in the role that he's playing for us, which is the ball-winning midfielder. He's got good anticipation and he's got good physicals. Now, physicals, I think, are really important for this role. Holding midfielders with, defensive mentality aren't really, technical-minded players. which this guy isn't. Obviously, the marking and tackling is the only decent ones in his technicals, and they are defensive positioning. Defensive-minded skills. So we don't want this guy going forward. So when you got someone like this that plays in the hole where he is, you've got two centre backs and you've got a very defensive-minded midfielder there, which will allow your fullbacks, as you can see in this tactic that we have, to actually get up the pitch and support the attack, because we haven't got players really on the wide positions in the attack. It allows these fullbacks to get forward and occupy that space and create a bit more width on your attacks, basically. So the important thing, like I said, is if you're going for really defensive minded, they've got to be really physical, and then they've got to be quite good at anticipation, positioning. Determination's one of the ones that I would say is nice to have, but it's not critical. But things like bravery, anticipation, and things like that. Because if you think about players that come up against him, players that are playing like an AMC role and stuff like that, they're going to be quite creative players. They're very rare. They're going to be big physical players. So if you've got someone that can play in this role and he's got really good bravery and good strength and good tackling and good aggression, then it means that pretty much every time you go into a game against the opposition, where you can set your opposition instructions, and they're playing in here, if they've got low bravery, then every single time tackling, yes, hard tackling. Now, obviously, these are the wide players, so depending on how they're going to behave. See, he's right-footed, so he's going to be occupied by the left back most of the time. And again, this guy is left-footed, so they're going to be hitting the flank. So your holding midfielder is probably going to be picking up the most advanced centre mid here. So as you can see on here, it's probably this chap, this Luca. So as you can see, his bravery is 8 to 12. So we haven't really got an advantage there in terms of the bravery. Clicking the wrong things here. So ideally, we would want this a bit higher, but we're at a level where we can't be expecting everything from this role. But everything else, he's really fantastic at. Yeah. So as long as you've got good positioning, like I said, we've spoken about, it's got to be good physical. It's good physically. Now, players that play in this role largely aren't going to get great average match ratings. It's just how it is in FM. A couple of FMs ago, fullbacks got really bad average ratings. It's just the way the match engine kind of works and addresses it. The important thing is these players aren't going to be doing anything crazy in terms of a technical sense, anything particularly skillful. They're not going to necessarily directly win you games in terms of saving a goal or scoring a goal, anything like that. They're just there to be basically a janitor. They're just going to mop things up, play it very simply, and allow a platform for your more creative players to perform on the pitch. So if you go into coach reports and things like that, the main thing I kind of look for here is consistency. They just got to be really good, solid every single time they step on the pitch, but they don't have to be, like I said, they're not doing anything particularly elaborate in terms of their roles and stuff like that. As you can see, he's got a lot of good pros in here. He's a young player, so he's going to develop. Driven, which is a great personality type to have in this role and stuff like that. And in terms of the cons, doesn't have the greatest jumping reach. Now, the difference really between this and your centre backs is that largely they're not going to be competing for too many aerial balls and things like that. Obviously, centre backs are competing for a lot more headers. Your holding midfielder, largely speaking, isn't going to be doing that as much, and they'll be coming up again. A typical AMC is going to be someone that's fairly short, but skillful on the ball. Maybe not the quickest, but very creative and things like that. So you think a very good counter to, a player of that type. So always, like I said, the anticipation, things like that. So if they're always in the right place, if they've got a good engine on them, they've got good stamina, they can always be pressing him. And if they've got good aggression, stuff like that, then when they're going for the tackles, they can use their physical advantage to impose themselves and basically to stop the creative AMC from doing anything. Now, also, they can be more of a goal threat AMC, so like a shadow striker or anything like that. So things like marking is really important, and anticipation as well is really important. So they can see when an attack's developing, where space is opening up, and they can make sure they're there to nullify that, really. So, physicality is really important, but they don't need to be the tallest. They just need to have a good engine on them. They need to be able to get around, and mentally, in terms of, they've got to have a bit of aggression and also know where to be. Decisions is something I don't want to see a low stat on, but I don't necessarily worry too much if it's not 20. There's other areas of the sort of attribute chart wheel, whatever, however you want to say it, really, that I think is a bit more important than that. But you want a bit, some good decisions and things like that. Now, if they got like good composure, good first touch, for example, good passing, then they can maybe look to be someone who's a bit more creative, like a Zugunda Volante or deep line playmaker, or even a regista. So we're going to start talking a bit more about creative roles in this area and stuff like that. But we're just going to finish up on the defensive minded ones, really. So if you go onto the play instructions here, you can see the ball winning midfielder. You can have that role further up into this area of the pitch as well. The reason why we've got this guy back here is because offensively he doesn't offer anything at all. So I'd much rather him further back, just mop up, any balls, any attacks and stuff like that. And basically his job is to just pass the ball very simply to these guys. So as you can see, shoot less often, dribble less, take fewer risks, hold position, and tackle harder. Now that's because he's on defend. You can have him support, but for this role, we don't want that. And very similarly, things like defensive midfielder. Just got a few less things on there. Now, obviously, if you go to personalise, you've got some things that you can't tick into. But again, this will allow you to use him as someone who can maybe launch counter-attack. So if you play like maybe a counter-attacking direct style play, that might be something you want to look into. So when he receives the ball or wins the ball, he's actually looking to go a bit, to your attacking unit rather than playing it simple. But because his passing's 9, his vision's 11, it's not amazing, but we have more creative players, so we just want him to play the ball very simply to more creative players. And then anchor, again, very similar, as you can see, shoot less often, dribble less often, take fewer risks and things like that. So there isn't really too much. I think it's just the pressing intensity that's different, as you see here. So halfback was it? So more often. So with this guy actually on here, with the good stamina, the good work rate, and the good aggression, I would probably be doing this. Now, because the way I do my tactics, I like to leave the team tactics relatively balanced and change them game to game. But that is something that's worth maybe looking into towards, because he's got that really good physical engine on him. That would be a really good instruction to put on. Now, do we have someone that can play this role that's a bit more creative? Yeah, he's not too bad. I'll tell you what, in fact, what you can do, obviously, on these things, is if you go to a role, and then you can select the player, because then it will reevaluate. Okay, so this guy here is our best sort of regista. So if we go on to the regista, and then look into the role here, so it's more aggressive as a deep line playmaker, suitable for possession-oriented tactics that press high up the pitch. So with this, we do have a higher line, but he's not creative. The other guy we're using, hence why we're not using the regista. But if we're using this guy, then obviously he's a bit more suited to that, because he can play the ball about and things like that. He is, you know, uh, able to dictate play from deep positions, creative outlets, and things like that. So if you've got players you want further up the pitch that are more of a direct goal threat, but not necessarily maybe the most creative, maybe they haven't got great passing or great vision or things like that, then this is a really good way to get someone to dictate the tempo and to play those key passes. He's not necessarily going to be getting your assists, but he is going to be able to be the one that can break the lines with the passing. So if you've got, say, like a shadow striker here, and you've got an inverted forward here, and you got Mazars and attack here, you've not got too much in the way of passing creativity. So a regista or a deep line playmaker is a good way to um, look around that. They're also useful if you've got someone who isn't physically particularly great, but they have got the ability to open up the space and things like that. What you will find as well is in this area you'll have a little bit more time on the ball than you will in this area, because this is always competed by at least two players, maybe three in most tactics. So it's something worth considering. Again, depends on your tactics, what you're trying to do. If you're really attacking, really offensive, if you're wanting to exert yourself on the opposition team, you're technically, skillfully more better than your opposition. It is something worth bearing in mind. If you've got, say, three centre backs here, for example, maybe you don't need a defensive minded midfielder in that role. Maybe you need someone to be a bit more creative, to again take the ball off the centre backs and to distribute the ball to other players on the pitch who are higher up and going to get you your goals, basically. So if we go back to the defensive minded guy, let's go back to how he got it, because there's just a couple little things that you want to look out for. So as you can see, this guy here, he's doing quite well actually. He's 7.01, which for a holding midfielder is fantastic. In Football Manager, most of the times I've been playing in 2024, my holding midfielder isn't getting much more than 6'7", 6'8", and that's just the way Football Manager can um, mark your players down. Basically, your attacking players are going to get sevens and pluses, because they're the ones scoring the goals, winning your games, and things like that. So the thing I always like to look for is just have a scan round on the form tables, and the average ratings isn't necessarily the most important things. Obviously, what these guys want to do is have really high pass completions, because the defensive minded people in particular are just playing very simple passes. Now, if they're in this role and they've got, we can actually see, so he's got 92% passing, which is good for this role. If it's 80 and he's playing simple passes, then there's a very critical error in the tactic. Now, is he making bad passes, or has he not got the options to pass the ball to someone? Extend the highlights in the match engine, just kind of, or you can even go and watch every pass that he's played in the analysis tab, is to work out why the passes aren't getting anywhere. But holding midfielders, the defensive minded ones, need to have really high pass completions. Now, if you're playing, say, a regista or a deep line playmaker, then it's going to be a lot less, because they're being far more adventurous with their passes. But you'd still, in turn, you would want to see much higher AX, which is the expected assists, and the assists on there. Now, he has actually got an assist, which is really good to see, bearing in mind he is not there to do that really. So he could easily go through a 30-game season and not get an assist, and I wouldn't be too worried about it, as long as other people on the pitch are doing what they should do. So they are going to pick up bookings and things like that in the role they play. They are generally going to be putting in aggressive tackles and nullifying opposition threats, and they will get tackles wrong, and they will get booked. But as long as they're not getting too many red cards, then you should be fine. You're not looking for them to dribble. the head winning is, reasonably important. Now, obviously, your centre backs have to be winning all the headers, really. They will occasionally lose them, and if they're up for corners in an offensive um, situation, the chances of winning the headers are obviously going to be a lot less, but defensively, they need to be. Now, with your holding midfielders, most of the time, they're not going to be your tallest players on the pitch. They're going to be ones that will stay back if needed on your set pieces. But you can get tall, defensive-minded players. So bear that in mind, and you have to rejig your set pieces to suit, because obviously you want your tall players going forward. But as he's 173 centimeters tall, obviously he's not good in attacking situations. He is set on stay back, not stay back if needed, stay back, because he is doing nothing going forward. Aerially, he's not great. He can't dribble, he can't shoot, he can't pass really at this level. So make sure that you analyze, the profile of your holding midfielder, and set them to either go forward or go back, depending on their strengths and weaknesses and stuff like that. So the head win percentage is pretty decent, considering his height isn't particularly great. That's pretty solid, so we're happy to see that. The tackle completion ratio, could be a bit better, but it's still relatively high. But obviously, you like to see good high stats with these three and things like that. And then, he's not going to be doing crosses or anything like that. So those sorts of things you don't need to worry about. But so yeah, just keep an eye on these things. Like I said, this guy's got a decent average rating anyway, but I do find that on Football Manager it doesn't really rate players that play this role. But obviously they do an important role, because they do the dirty work. They give the ball simply to your more creative players, and it allows them to express themselves in the game. And they're the ones that get the high ratings, get the plaudits, and everything like that. But also, just always keep an eye on the stats and the form, and you can sort of pinpoint sometimes why they're getting low ratings. And most of the time, I find it's the heading that they get hammered for. As you can see here, 6.4 sounds horrendous. He's completed a large amount of his passes. He's lost one header out of two, but he's won the other one. He's made an interception. But other than that, it's not as bad as 6.4 would maybe suggest. The other thing to obviously keep an eye on is interceptions as well. The profile of this player is he's very short, he's very quick, he's good anticipation and things like that. So he should be intercepting quite a bit, which he is. Obviously, you see some games he's intercepting 5 times, 4 times a game. So this is something you do want to see, because they should be reading the ball, cutting out passes and things like that. And obviously, if they're not doing this, then it's something to be, sort of very wary of and stuff like that. So yeah, I think we've rambled on enough today about holding midfielders, but hopefully you found the video interesting, picked up a few tips and things like that. Obviously, let me know in the comments what you look for in your holding midfielders. And yeah, until the next video, have a great day. Thank you.